Warning: the following content may contain elements that are not suitable for all audiences.
I had to sleep in my car. I was getting kicked out because he didn't want me to keep fighting with him and just had to keep dealing with the after effects of his actions.
I appreciate you being here tonight with us. We're here in the new setup, which you see. Honestly, I'm digging the lighting. Like I was telling you a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
This doesn't feel too far, does it?
No,
we don't feel
perfect.
like we're like a galaxy away from each other.
Nah,
Because that was one of the things that Dayon, who's actually first day on shift on sound. Dayon, say hello to the people.
Hello.
All right, good enough. Dayon is going to be chiming in from time to time. So he's going to be in the background, and so that everybody listening kind of doesn't get an unexpected voice that they're not used to.
Yeah, right.
Where's this guy at? Because the camera's not pointed on him, so he's gonna be chiming in, and then you just hear a third voice, a voice from the heavens, if you will.
Right.
Yeah. But one of the things that I wanted to hit on with you was how long, like, it's crazy how many people that I've talked to that I've known for forever, and they like how little I actually knew about them. And I think I've known you since like, I think high school, right? I just remember that you were very reserved from the time that like we were in high school. And keep in mind, in high school, like I did not talk much either. Like most people would probably know who I am, but probably not know me like as a person. So I think like that's one of the things that people probably remember about me. Like they recognize who I am, but don't know me personally. And that's honestly how I feel about most people too, is I don't know them that well, but I know about them.
Yeah.
We haven't talked in like close to 10 years.
Yeah, it's probably since high school, yeah.
Right. What happened? What have you been up to since high school? Because there's a lot of stuff that have happened. You're a new father.
Yep.
You have a son now. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
How old is he now?
He's about to be 2.5.
2.5?
Yeah, he just turned 2 in January. So
time flies, bro.
even just from now to January, it's just been like a blink of an eye. It's like, it's just so crazy how once you have a kid, literally just snap of a finger, it's just year after year after year.
Yeah.
It just keeps going on and on.
Yeah. And so what has fatherhood been like for you? Was it anything like you expected?
Honestly, no. There was a lot of new stuff that I didn't expect.
What surprised you the most?
I would say mainly with, when he was newborn, the amount of times I'd have to wake up in the middle of the night, that was definitely a big surprise to me because, I did a lot of the, just the rocking to sleep, the making him the bottle, just the late nights. And then I'd, put him back to sleep. It'd be like 3 a.m. and I'd wake right up at 6 a.m. to go to work. So there was a lot of lost sleep within that time. But at the end of the day, it was very, very much worth it,
I hear a lot about the kids in the infancy stage having very random sleep schedules. Is that true?
Yeah. Yes. There's it literally like you up to I'd say maybe about 1.5 years old. That's when you could start to get them on a schedule. At least in mine, at least.
Yeah.
But up until that point, it's anytime.
Right.
Anytime they feel tired, they'll just tuck her out and that'll be it, and you'd be like, oh, wow, okay, it's time to, take a nap myself or just get stuff done. A lot of times during his naps, too, that'd be like time to just get everything done, run errands real quick and stuff like that,
How are you faring as far as mentally being? Were you expecting any mental difficulties? Did you have any mental difficulties at raising a kid for the first time?
Mental difficulties, I'd say not too much, but there was a lot of sacrifices I did have to make. And that's just to be expected with like parenthood, like freedom, for example, of just being able to hang out with anybody whenever. Just, that goes pushed to the side, and just trying to make more of a scheduled day for myself, if that makes sense. Like, before I was never on like a routine before I had a kid, and then now I am.
Sure.
And I just worked myself into it and mentally prepared myself for that kind of before he was born.
Right.
So I kind of just worked myself into that. But other than that, the sacrifices of just, not seeing friends often. There was phases when he was first born, like when he was around, like, I'd say 6 months old. I wasn't seeing my friends, like, at all. Like, I'd only see them maybe, like, I think 4 or 5 times that year, of his first year being alive. So, yeah, it's just pretty much you just get on the grind kind of, and you just, you just do what you can for your family at that point.
Fair enough. And has being a parent changed your viewpoint on your parents at all?
Yes. A lot of reevaluating my childhood has come into effect. Because from an honest standpoint, I feel like not as much my mom, but my dad. My dad didn't make any type of sacrifice. Just thinking back to my own childhood and everything.
Sure.
There was a lot of stuff that just I wouldn't do that he did. So for me, that's kind of a milestone, because it's like I tell myself, like, I'm just going to do everything I can for my son more than what my dad did. But shout out my mom, though, because she did do everything she could for me at that time. She was taking me everywhere, taking us to events, trying to make the best of our childhood that she could.
What you mentioned, wanting to do things differently than your dad. Is there anything specific that comes to mind?
Yes. He would always not make time for me. With that being said, and same with my younger brother too. We would ask him, for example, "Hey, Dad, let's go play basketball." He'd come outside for maybe 2-3 minutes, throw the ball once or twice, and then he'd be like, "Hey, I got to go." And that was a common thing. He would never actually sit down and play with us. I felt like another example would be, I used to be big into Hot Wheel cars.
I was at one point too. Yeah.
I literally would sit there for hours and hours and hours and just sit there and just play the toys with myself and just be in my own zone. And he never once would offer. So there's stuff like that where it's like, I want to be there for my son as much as I can.
Have you ever, first of all, I want to set up, you have one sibling, right?
Yes.
And a younger brother. How much younger is he than you?
4 years.
4 years younger. Okay.
24 right now.
Okay. So growing up with him, how was your relationship with him?
It was bad.
Was it?
Yeah.
What was the struggle?
So we didn't know that he kind of had a form of autism up until his teenage years. So around the time he was starting to hit puberty, that's when we kind of found out.
Yeah.
But before then, he would act out, and nobody thought anything of it, I guess. Me and my brother would physically fight a lot. He would start it most of the time. I mean, I can admit that I did start it a few times, but it's just kind of the normal, brother feuding, stuff like that. Sometimes it would get out of hand, though. And I feel like now my brother tells me, like, hey, why did this happen back then? And why did that happen back then? And he's kind of self-reflecting a lot of stuff that we've been through. And if I go back in time, maybe I wouldn't have done as much and been as hard on him, because I was honestly hard on him a few times about certain things. So, but thankfully now, our childhood was rough, but now we've patched a lot of things up, and we could laugh on a lot of situations from the past.
What gave it away? Was there like a scene or like an event, I should say, like an event where you were like, where somebody asked the question, "Hey, is something going on?"
Between me and my brother?
As far as like his autism diagnosis?
Yes. He got expelled from middle school.
What happened with that?
So he was having a lot of outbursts and stuff like that. He never really got along with a lot of his classmates. But the big kicker, though, was his expulsion, where he had gotten into a fight with a substitute teacher physically. He claims that the substitute teacher grabbed him, like grabbed his arm or something like that, and my brother not, standing for that, and him having his issues and stuff like that, acted kind of like defensively.
Sure.
And I guess it went down like that.
Yeah. And what was, so that was like the event where it was like, hey, let's get something checked out?
Yeah, that was when it started. And then, with with autism, I don't know if everybody who has it has gone through similar things, but there's a phase where once you start getting medicated, you got to find the right medicine. And that was a very rough phase too, trying to find his perfect match, because every medicine he'd get on would affect him differently.
Can you, as much as you know about it, can you dive into that a little bit? What were the effects where you were like, how would you know if it was good for him or not?
The mood swings.
Okay.
When or if something would frustrate him, he'd get like blood red, violently angry.
Yeah.
But there was one of the medicines specifically, I forgot the name of it, but it made him gain like 80 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And he literally looked like someone inflated him like a balloon.
Wow.
And then the minute he stopped taking it, he literally just lost all the weight, which was crazy.
How many medications was he on total before they got to the right one?
Rough estimate from what I remember, probably at least 8 or 9.
Wow.
So there was a lot of every time he'd be on a medicine though,
Yeah.
the way we know to switch it was he had to go to the hospital. But when he had to go to the hospital, it was usually something bad, or he'd act violent, act out,
Wow.
act out on someone else, act out at school. After he got expelled from middle school, he had gotten transferred over to Braun Alternative School right in the neighborhood. And yeah, there was a lot of stuff happened at that school to where he had to, keep going to the hospital and stuff like that.
How did that affect you?
It was a lot. It was, I don't know. It was a bag of mixed emotions, let's say that. Because a lot of the time, my dad would take it out on me, saying that I would be triggering him. Oh, if I'm around, I can't live there. There was times where I had to sleep in my car a few times. Right, this was right after I graduated high school too. So my brother was about 14. I had to sleep in my car because I was getting kicked out because he didn't want me to keep fighting with him, and cops getting called and ambulance rides and all that stuff that came with it. So I felt like I was a victim in a sense, because like I just had to keep dealing with the after effects of his actions, and even if I didn't do anything. So I felt like it was kind of unfair to me, but it's what happens.
How did your mom deal with it?
It was pretty rough on her. My mom comes from a family that has a lot of mental problems. So like it was kind of, I think it was like rehashing old memories first. So every time something would happen with my brother, she'd take it pretty rough.
Yeah.
She'd be crying and stuff like that. So it was rough back then.
What do you think, if you could find a lesson in that situation, do you think you learned something from that, like to apply to your life now?
Yes, it's crazy because I used to be, I think as you can remember too, I was very, like you say, reserved, quiet. And, I feel like now after dealing with all that stuff, it's easier for me to talk to other people, especially if they do have mental problems and stuff like that, because I'm more understanding of, the stuff people go through and the stuff family members go through when that happens.
That makes sense. So you're more you tune in to people a little bit more. Is that right?
Yeah. It's I try to be like a relatable person to everybody I come in contact with in different ways, because like I have so many different life experiences and stuff like that. And I feel like that one is a major one because the people who go through the mental problems, well, for one, the people who go through the mental problems feel alone a lot of the time. But then also the family members of those people too, they don't have like a real outreach or people to speak to about this stuff a lot of the time too. So it's like I kind of go hand in hand on that because I understand things from both sides. And like I said, if I could go back in time, there'd be a lot of stuff I wouldn't do now. But it's just a part of life, I guess, part of growing up and stuff like that.
Sure. Well, one of the things that I mean, anybody who's interacted with anybody could tell you that you have to kind of stumble through interactions growing up before you figure out, oh, I don't like how that made that person feel or how I felt after I had the interaction, good or bad, right? So I think that stumbling is kind of what really the only way to go through to learn things when you are dealing with relationships with somebody else is, I don't know how that person's, let's say, for example, I say something to you that in my family is normal. Like I ask you a question, I'll give you an example. Like I would consider my family a bit nosy sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. And if they're watching, they might not like that, but it's true. Sometimes we ask, someone in my family will ask a question about, hey, what happened to so-and-so or this friend you had, and maybe where you come from, you don't really talk about that stuff. Right. Like, let's say in your family, nobody really asks those questions. You just everyone just deals with their own stuff in private. Right. You might be upset by me asking you that question because that might feel intrusive, right? Whereas in my family, everybody asks that all the time. And so they'll find another method of dealing with that that isn't triggering, but is maybe like a thing you can deflect easily. But somebody who doesn't get that question doesn't know how to deal with that. And maybe they haven't dealt with the emotions if they've had a bad experience. And so maybe you shut down and now you don't talk to me, but I'm thinking like, I just asked you a normal question.
Yeah.
And until we have that interaction where maybe you get upset and we don't talk anymore, or I notice that you become distant where I'm like, oh, what happened? Right. That's stumbling through because I don't know. And you also maybe never knew how you would respond to that. So I guess what I'm getting to is you kind of have to go through a stumble with people throughout life because there's no roadmap to figure out how other people's minds work.
Yeah, that is very true.
I think the older that I get, I'm noticing that every single person reacts differently, even if it's just slightly. Even if I find people who think like me, they'll still respond in different ways to certain situations. Where we might agree 80% of the time, maybe that other 20% is like, I wouldn't do it that way. Yeah. Does that make sense? I just think that's just how it is. And sometimes we don't do a good job of not shaming somebody for not doing it right the first time, right? So with that being said, as you guys are growing up, how does the relationship evolve with your parents and with your brothers? How long did it take before you guys hit a balance, so to speak?
It was around, so my brother eventually stabled out on a certain medicine. He was doing good on it, but then he just didn't like the fact that he was on medicine in general. So he slowly weaned himself off of it. But the minute he got a job is when the real change I noticed happened. I felt like he feels like he's more fitting into society as to before. I don't think he felt that way, especially with being expelled from school and having to go to an alternative school and all that. So the big change was when he got a job and he just gave it his all. He devotes himself to his job, any job he works. He's a very hard worker. He loves money and he loves just wanting to better himself now. So I feel like there was a lot of stuff that he went through, mentally and just with himself, just telling himself hey, I got to stop what I'm doing. And he saw me kind of too as kind of a role model because at the time when he started working, I was working 2 jobs and going to community college. So I felt like he kind of just got on that flow too, with seeing me doing that.
So throughout high school or throughout elementary, how did it affect you, the issues you guys were having in school, or what did school feel like? Because for me, school was very, I wasn't a fan of going to school. I was very, uptight, where I only liked a specific group of people. My friends had pretty much stayed the same from the time I was a kid up until I became, I was 19, where I kind of left my house. I left my neighborhood. That's when I started to expand. You know, like people are different and you just have to figure out a flow. And I was kind of lazy about it, to be completely honest. I didn't like dealing with personalities that were too different from mine. And that was my thing that I dealt with growing up. How did you feel going to school?
I'm just going just to go.
Yeah.
Just going to make my parents happy. I could speak a lot on that subject because if I could go back in time, I'd probably redo my whole school experience.
What do you think you'd change?
My shyness and being reserved. A big part of that too was because of the stuff that would happen at home. I feel like not a lot of people would understand, so I just kept it to myself. I did have pretty much the same my main group of friends I had since middle school, and then it transferred into high school, and I'm still friends with them to this day. But I wish I would have kind of broke out of my shell a little bit, maybe, made different friends at the time. Because a lot of the time, too, when I would make friends, between middle school and high school, they'd be considered like the bad kids. I felt like they kind of understood me a little bit more. And that plays into just other factors in the life after leaving high school, too. Like I started hanging around them a little bit more and kind of brushed with trouble a little bit too much. And then I had to kind of push them to the side and be like, yeah, had to give up on that and just kind of went back to my main group of friends. But I just feel like if I could go back, though, I would change a lot of people I'd talk to differently. When did you realize that they were like kids that, like, I guess bad kids, or I don't know if that's the right word, but troubled kids, I guess. Because when you're in it, right? Like when you're in the group, it might not feel that way, right? Like it might just feel like, hey, these people get me. Yeah, yeah.
Was there a moment? Like what happened?
So specifically middle school, I was hanging around with the kids who after school they would go to the park and partake in smoking weed and drinking at that's a young age, though, 6th grade, 7th grade. So they were kind of like from, I would say, I guess you could say, broken homes a little bit. And that's where I kind of felt like I fit in more with them, even though like my home, I had a 2-parent household. It still felt like it was broken only because of the amount of problems that would come up and other things. So I felt like I related with them more. And like here and there, I'd just hang out with them once in a while, and then, stuff would happen, and I'd be like, all right, time to find new friends. And then I remember once the transition from middle school to high school, because like I know like most of the Hilly kids went to Oak Forest, right? A lot of the kids that I was hanging out with in middle school went to Tinley, so that connection kind of just fell off naturally, So then when I started going to Oak Forest, I remember my freshman year, I was hanging out with a lot of like sophomores and juniors. And then it was just transitioning from person after person. I was hanging out with the people who weren't doing homework, were coming to school with like no backpacks, no books, nothing. And it's just like at the time, like I just thought it was kind of cool. And, thinking back now, it's like, man, I really wish I would have actually did my work and tried to get like a scholarship or something, because sometimes those, hanging out with the wrong crowd isn't really going to get you nowhere,
Did you learn something about yourself from that group?
Yeah. I learned that, well, I could say more of a lesson learned is I don't really fit in with that type of crowd. But I learned just because I felt like a lot of those kids too, like I wouldn't say they're like kids of the streets, because Oak Forest isn't really like a city Chicago type of neighborhood, but it does have its little elements here and there.
Yeah.
A lot of times too, I would just go home and just immediately go outside and wouldn't come back till nightfall.
Yeah.
So you could say I was kind of a child of the streets in that essence, but it's just like I got a lot more, like, I guess you could say, like real experiences, not like sheltered experiences hanging around with those type of people. So a lesson learned from that would be that life is kind of cruel to people at young ages who tend to roam the streets and get into trouble and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like kids mature at a faster rate when they're not sheltered and when they're just out and about doing anything, because I got stories on stories, man, of stuff we used to go through and see. And it's like stuff that, 14, 15, 16-year-olds shouldn't even be going through, So I guess you could say a lesson learned from that is just life is kind of cruel sometimes. It's kind of it's an interesting subject if I dug deeper into it, but I have stories on that for another time.
Sure. When you got into high school, did you feel a change at all? Like because I felt a transition when I went from middle school to high school. Things kind of started to get a little bit like I had to start thinking about what I want to do.
Yeah.
When you get into high school, especially during your junior, senior years, the question arises of what am I going to do?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Did that ever cross your mind?
Yeah. And to fast forward a little bit, it had a big impact on after I graduated. So, I think it was around junior year. I think that's when the ACTs and stuff were happening. It was around that time where, like you said, it started hitting me like, oh man, I gotta figure out what I want to do. So I was telling my mom, I'm like, hey, I feel like I should just take like a year or two off, not jump right into community college. She thought it was a good idea, still went along with it. Ended up not liking the classes I took, and I ended up dropping out for about a year and a half, and I didn't go back until I was about 2021 with a whole new mindset. So I feel like that it is pretty rough at that age because it's like, oh man, the deadline's coming up. I got to figure out something. I got to figure out, am I going to four-year university? Am I going to community college, or am I not going to do anything? And I feel like with the school only does so much for that transition. I feel like they kind of don't prepare you too much.
I agree.
Mainly with even just small stuff like how to write checks and, like just real world stuff.
Balancing finances, figuring out how credit works.
Yep.
There's a lot that I was a bit shocked, maybe overwhelmed is the right word, where I was like, I didn't know about this. I didn't know about this. And granted, some parents of people that I know taught them that stuff. And, I didn't have that. So, my parents also don't know much about that stuff. Right. So it was like, I went out there and I was shocked by the amount of stuff I didn't know.
Yep.
And so at this point, right, when you're in high school, what are you into? Like, what do you think you're going to do at this point?
So, when I was in high school, I wanted to do auto mechanics. So I do remember when I was in high school, I did take an auto mechanics class my senior year. It did interest me, but it didn't interest me enough to the point of actually wanting to do it for a career. More like a side hobby, and it's still funny enough is to this day too, just a side hobby for me. But I was debating. I always wanted to be a cameraman for a news crew.
Oh,
so because it's funny. Back in the day, I used to have a YouTube channel. I think it was around 2010 or 2011.
Yeah.
I was just taking videos of anything, and I just used to have a camcorder and just walk around and take videos of interesting stuff. So it's I kind of wanted to go that route of communications.
Okay.
But then when I actually got into the schooling for it, which was my first round with community college, it didn't hit right with me. So I kind of just it just didn't interest me, so I kind of just dropped it.
Did it feel like high school to you, like a continuation?
So funny you say that. So I went to South Suburban College. It's in South Holland. Now, the people that I know who went to Moraine, they all said that Moraine felt like it was more like that. South Suburban, it was more just you're kind of on your own.
Yeah.
Unless you grew up over there, because it's Oak Forest is on the tiniest tip of their district.
Yep.
So it's you're with a bunch of people you don't know. So I just minded my business. There was just a few people from Oak Forest that did go there, but we never saw each other. So
you went to South Suburban.
Yep.
Yeah, most people went. I went to Moraine, and Moraine Valley, just because I tried it out too. When I was at the end of high school, I wanted to do either something with cinematography or I wanted to do something with animation because I always liked drawing as a kid. But it became painfully clear to me that I did not have the patience for school.
Yes.
Like the way that I learn isn't in a classroom. Like I need to get hands on.
Yep, I'm
like
the same way.
Exactly. So I just need to give me the thing, right? Whatever item I'm going to use, and then be next to me for when I mess up, and then tell me what I should have done.
Yep.
Like that's the best way for me to learn.
Yep.
And so sitting in a classroom, I think I've always had like anxiety with school, like taking tests, and I'm a horrible test taker. I think that's where I like crash and burn is when I sit down in front of a test and I'm given a time limit.
Yep.
Like you have 30 minutes, 45 minutes to complete this 60 question test. Like I'll sit on one question for 30 minutes. And then the next thing I know, I have to go A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C, because I don't have the time.
It's the same exact way I do it too, man. That would every time we'd have to take tests, especially with math, I would just literally just crash and I'd just be staring blankly at the paper and I'm like, oh man.
When I read things, it's almost like I don't understand the words that I'm reading until I read them over and over again. And I think it's because I'm so anxious about it that I can't think logically. Yep. Like I'm almost like in survival mode, trying to like, I got to finish this test. Yeah. Rather than what is this question even asking me? Right. So at what point do you decide, or what did you try first? Let's start there.
So I did do communications, first round of community college. And then when I went back about a year and a half later, I did criminal justice. So criminal justice was my plan B pretty much.
Okay.
And ended up liking it. But even to this day, though, it's like I still feel like maybe I should have chose something else.
What gave you that inclination? Like what made you feel like, maybe not this?
So it was just like I was hearing more and more about like how it was kind of hard to get into those type of jobs. There's a lot of networking and a lot of like you need to know people type stuff. But this was like pre-COVID too. Like I know like after COVID, a lot of stuff has changed. But yeah, like I just heard a lot of stuff like that, and I'm like, man, I'm not really the talker type, and so like to network, like I'm cool with like once I get to know somebody, like that's when I really start opening up. And, like if I'm not the type to like go up and like really, go out there and try to promote myself type of person. So I took that into play and I'm like, I don't think I'm going to like it. Criminal justice kind of means a little bit more to me because my uncle, I was very close with him. He's passed away, but he was a Oakland police officer for like 34 years. And I remember when I'd always be at his house when I was a kid, he'd have like a take-home police car, and I thought that was the coolest thing. And I'm like, oh wow, you get to fight bad guys and do this and do that, and like I thought that was kind of cool. So that always struck an interest into me, and I figured like, all right, I may as well give it a shot.
Yeah. And
thankfully, all the classes I took were, they're right up my alley. Got good grades. Was making the honor roll for the few semesters I was there, and got my associates. So. But I didn't go any further in the associates with that.
It was the challenge for you was just that people were saying you were going to have to network. That was the main thing. Like, were you questioning if you could?
Yeah. Just because I wasn't like I would say I pretty much broke out of my, because I've always been shy. I pretty much broke out of my shell right after graduating high school. So that was like right around the time I was taking those classes, and I'm like, I wasn't fully, talk active yet,
Yeah.
Now maybe if I took them now, maybe it'd be a lot different. Because like I've had, a lot of experience with just working with the public with, all the jobs I've done up to this point. So I feel like maybe if I had that then, maybe I would have stuck with it.
Sure. And so then, I'm sure at some point you made a decision like, I won't continue this. What was the thought process after that?
I felt like I disappointed mainly my mom. My dad, not so much, because my dad, I hate to throw him under the bus, but my dad never graduated high school either. So to me, I was already ahead of him just getting a high school diploma. And I kind of sensed like, even then I sensed jealousy from him in a weird way.
Do you mind if I ask you about how you felt there was jealousy there?
Because like usually, like for the most part, a parent wants to see their kid do well, right? My dad is very different when it comes to that.
Was he like critical when you?
Yeah, like he kind of made like the end of high school hard on me. I don't know if he was doing that on purpose, but like he was not like trying to sabotage it, but like he was always like downplaying everything I was doing. And I'm like, all right, man, whatever, you know. So I always felt like there was a sense of jealousy, but then especially when I started doing college classes, he's like, oh, you're not going to like it. Oh, you're going to change your mind, this and that. And I felt like at that time, too, that kind of had a part of why I dropped out the first time, too. Like him not building me up, not giving me confidence. Like, so I felt like that was part of the reason, too. But I know when I quit all those classes, I know it disappointed my mom a lot, too. Mainly, and they paid for that first semester. And then ever since then, I'm like, all right, I'm going to pay for everything else after that. I'm sorry for letting you guys down, you know. What
did your mom say to you?
She just thought I was just going to be just, you know, winging it and, you know, not going to be anything in life, and kind of followed the route my dad does with like just being in a warehouse his entire life. That doesn't interest me.
Sure.
So that kind of too, like I want to be more.
Right. So what was the thought process of like what's next? How did that go for you after that?
It was rough.
Yeah.
So after I quit the schooling, I was spending a lot of time with my friends, and then I picked up a second job just to kind of make up for it, to not, you know, tell my parents like, hey, you know, I'm trying, you know.
Yeah.
So I was working at the Jewel Osco over here, and then at that point I was working at a flyer delivery company. I found it on Craigslist, funny enough. So that was an interesting job. I cycled through a lot of second jobs while I kept Jewel. Like I worked seasonal at FedEx for a little bit. I worked for Serve Pro, the water restoration company. And then I found a foreclosed home job. And funny enough, I worked two of those foreclosed home jobs. The first one was a Craigslist job. They screwed me over. They didn't even pay me for my time. I worked there for like 4 or 5 weeks.
Wow.
So I kind of gained experience, I guess you could say, from that. And then I got with another local family that was doing the same type of work.
Yeah.
And then I worked with them from 2015 up until 2022.
Okay.
So
that was a little bit better.
Yeah. So like that kind of stuff interests me more because like it was hands-on, that type of work. Every day was a new experience. We were going to different neighborhoods all over the Chicago, Indiana area, eating at different restaurants for lunch. So it was kind of fun. Like every day was always like a, you know, like, oh, what's going to happen next, or what are we going to see next?
It was at least exciting.
Yeah. So that type of stuff, I figured that like more hands-on type things were more my deal, instead of like sitting behind a desk or, you know, being cooped up in one spot at a job. You know,
sure.
That makes sense. I just like having my freedom, you know.
One of the things that because it's funny that you say that, because I also didn't realize that there's also certain type of jobs. Like I get that not everybody's a fan of like jobs that you start out with, right? That are considered like a first job.
Yeah.
Like, for example, working in food. My first job was at Portillo's when I was 17, and not my favorite type of work environment. And as I got older, I realized that I like lone wolf jobs. Yeah. So I like jobs where I ultimately, like, I need to be the matter expert. And so I need to make a decision about how things are going to go. Where I worked retail after I worked food, and it was pretty similar. Yeah. Where I had coworkers, and these coworkers sometimes they would either carry their weight or not carry their weight, but I'm expected to carry their weight if they don't. And it almost felt like I was being punished for being good at my job. And that was when I realized, like, I don't know if because like I enjoy having, for example, the conversation we're having now. Like I enjoy talking to people in a group setting. I love hanging out with people, being relaxed. But in a work environment, I realize that I enjoy just being on my own.
Yeah. Yep.
What you went through that job where you said like, you got screwed over, but it almost felt like you kind of landed somewhere where in the field of work that you're at least comfortable in. Did I get that right?
Yeah, it's funny how that worked out too, because I was distraught after that, man. I'm not gonna lie. I was sending them email after email, waiting for responses and all types of stuff, and I just had to take that L. At the end of the day, when I realized, they're not gonna pay me my money that they deserve, that I deserved from that.
So then they just went zero contact when you would.
Yeah, so they kind of got me on a loophole. So that type of work, you're considered a 1099 contractor.
Right.
So they were like trying to make some stuff up, saying like, "Oh, I don't even know who you are. Oh, you were supposed to do this type of work and that type of work." And I'm like, "Hey, I had somebody telling me like you're a higher up person. I don't know who they are to you, but they were acting like a manager to me. They were telling me what to do, and I was doing it.
Yeah.
They were leaving me at job sites by myself while they were eating on a company credit card. Like there was just so much stuff, man, with that part, and I just felt it was very unfair that I got treated that way. But then again, it was a Craigslist type job, so it's kind of you get what you pay for, I guess, right?
Well, yeah, but like also, how would you have known? You know what I'm saying? Like that's something that, like I don't know anything about. For example, like you could have a good experience going on. Someone else might have gone on Craigslist, and there were honest people on there.
Yep.
And then you go on there and you happen to come across somebody who's not honest. And so there's two different experiences. So one person who had the positive experience on Craigslist is going to say, Craigslist is great.
Yeah. Exactly.
I got a great job, and this person that I met was great. And I know for Craigslist, there's a bunch of other stuff you could buy and sell too. So like, I had a great experience. I think I could say the same thing about like Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
Where I've seen a lot of bad experiences on the news about people who are who get cheated on their stuff that they buy from there. It's like, they got scammed, and I bought a ton of stuff on Facebook Marketplace and had great experiences. So my review might be different, right? So how could you know? Is I guess what I'm trying to get at.
Exactly, because like the job prior to that, the flyer delivery one, that was pretty upfront, straightforward. I had no issues. But like with Craigslist too, a lot of the jobs they advertise there are like the less desirable jobs.
Sure.
So like at that point in life, because I had just quit the schooling, I was like a chicken with my head cut off. I'm like, all right, I gotta get something else too, because Jules was only like I think like 24 hours a week or something. Like that. It was
it's a part time.
Yeah. So I was like, and even then, like I was trying to take as many hours as I could whenever I could, but that was like during like holiday seasons and stuff.
Sure.
Like that. So yeah, at that point, I'm like, all right, I got to do something else. So figured picking up a second job would be to my better, standing. And it was like, it also helped me too, like working the second job, helped me not be around, my house as much, where a lot of the issues were coming up and arguments and stuff like that. So that kept me like, in a good mindset.
So at this point, home life still wasn't good. Like it did not improve?
No. So my dad is the big I'd say he's the major problem there. More than my brother, even though my brother has issues. My dad likes to instigate a lot of fights and arguments. So like I could be minding my business. Let's say I cut the grass, right? He'll be like, "Oh, well, you didn't cut this spot right," or "Oh, you didn't do this right," "Oh, you didn't pick up the sticks." Like he won't see the fact that I cut the grass like as like, "Oh, thank you." Like he'll find all the faults within what I did, and he's never like pleased. So a lot of stuff was with him.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think your dad is in competition with you?
I've always thought that. Funny you say that. That's where I got like the sense, the jealousy thing from him too. It's a very weird mindset to have, and leading back to what we were talking about earlier, I would never do that to my son. I want to see the best for him. He could be as great as he can. I'm not going to be jealous. I'm going to be happy as I can for him.
Because like I would imagine that the reason why the things that you do aren't good enough is because you're actually doing a great job, and that might be a threat to him.
Yep. And it's like I tell myself that, but it's like it kind of hits you differently when you hear that from a parent. Like the parent is not
100%.
pleased with anything you're doing, even though you know you're doing the right thing. So it's like a personal blow.
Absolutely. 100%.
And it's just I've always had that kind of thing. I've always had issues with my self-confidence. Of course, as you can see, I'm very skinny. I've always been skinny.
Hey, man, I wish I had your genetics, man. I gain weight quick. If I eat one burger right now, I'm going to have to go run for a while.
Yep, everybody tells me that too, man. They watch me. I can just shovel everything I can in my mouth. I literally eat anything and it just doesn't. I don't gain a pound.
I think that's a superpower in my eyes.
But man, back in middle school though, I was getting picked on a lot just for being the skinny kid. It's getting name called. Oh, you're anorexic. Oh, you don't eat anything. Oh, I could pick you up and throw you. Like just random
kinds
stuff.
of stuff. Yeah,
you know, it's like unnecessary, but it's kid stuff. You know.
Sure.
But at that time, it's like I was already dealing with the stuff at home growing up, and then hearing people say that type of stuff to me. That's kind of the reason why I feel like I was so reserved, because it's like
the message comes in as I am not good enough.
Yep.
And as a kid, like I mean, for me, as a kid, I just wanted to be accepted.
Yep.
Right. So how did that translate in your personal relationships, for example? Did you notice it show up? Because like when I started dating, I didn't pick up on it immediately. It took a couple of relationships for me to pick up on, I'm falling in on a pattern. Like I keep doing certain things and I keep feeling like a certain way with people, like certain things they do. Was there ever a realization of that for you?
a little bit. It's kind of like a little side subject, but
Yeah.
I guess you could say the way I dress would be partially kind of falling into that category, where a lot of people would see me back then as like dressing like a thug.
Okay.
Like I liked like that gangster look back then. For some reason, I latched onto that when I was around like 10 or 11. And I just ran with it kind of my whole life.
Yeah.
So it's like that type of stuff. Like I feel like I don't know. People kind of get my wrong first impression of me because they think I'm going to be one type of way when
Sure.
I'm really not.
Yeah.
Until people actually get to know me and they're like, oh wow, I'm really relate with this guy. You know, I think I'm like a whole different person. Like I've
Sure.
had people used to tell me. I remember one of my brother's friends that I worked at Jewel with. He thought I was like some scary gangster, creepy guy.
Right.
And then when he got to know me, we became friends instantly. So it's like, it's just funny how like that first impression type of thing always kind of gets thrown off with me.
Yeah. Either, and then people say like, first impressions are very important, but honestly, I think the problem isn't that, it's that we judge a book by its cover.
Yep.
And so the lesson there shouldn't be I don't think the lesson should be is try to make a good first impression, because you should be allowed to be you. And if that's you, then who cares?
Yep,
right?
Exactly.
So I think the thing we could do better is to teach kids young that everybody dresses and acts in the way that's natural to them. And so let's try to figure out how we can get along with them. And if we don't, then it doesn't mean that they're bad people. Like that's, I think, the approach. Obviously easier said than done,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like you could just say that, but kids are still going to be kids. But I think when I think about if I ever would be a parent, what would I want to instill? And I think that would be a highlight of that is don't judge people by the way that they look to you from the outside.
Exactly.
Give them a chance and then figure out if they're going to be people you want to hang around. But don't jump too quick.
Yeah.
I think that patience is the biggest lesson there.
Yeah, because even back in middle school and high school are kind of the same with it, but you got everyone's kind of categorized. You got the jocks, and you could tell who they are.
Yeah.
The popular girls, the gothic kids. So it's like everything kind of gets categorized, sadly, at a young age, and it's like at that age you don't think about that type of stuff. You just go to school, you do your thing, whatever. But it's so crazy how like everything gets categorized at such an early age, and then like the stereotypes and they're this, they're that, you know, and it's like a lot of people kind of get scared to really branch out, like especially if they're like, oh, like you're not going to see a popular kid talking to the nerdy kid, you know what I mean? So it's like a lot of times that type of stuff kind of gets like misconstrued.
I have a question for you about when you became a dad. Did that change anything with your parents, like your relationship?
Yeah, a little bit. It actually, at first, it was more of a negative result that I got from them. Oh, you're not ready. Oh, you're too young. Oh, this, all that. Because my parents had me, I think they were like 35 or 36. So, and when my son was conceived, I think I was 25. So I had like 10 years less than them.
Yeah.
Me personally, I believe that having a kid around my age is probably better than the older age, because it's like, hey, I could go to the park and not have my legs give out. You know, my knees won't give out if I'm trying to play at the park with them. So
sure.
I feel like I'm just more relatable in a sense of like I felt like they were a little bit more harder on me because they were older. Like, you know, in your 30s, I don't know, we don't know yet how it's going to be, but I feel like they had more of like a heavier, mature mindset, and they wanted more out of us than what, you know, is feasible at that time. So it's like, I don't know, they took it kind of weird at first. But then after he was born, my son grew on them a lot. My dad's like anger and fighting and all that stuff, hostility has gone down a lot.
Really?
So that's a kind of a surprise. So if anything, me having my son was actually more of a better thing in that sense.
What you said you noticed the hostility went down. Was it the hostility towards you?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if it's like he came to a realization like, wow, my son had a son. Like, I think he might have thought he was going to be older when I had my son, maybe, because he's like 64. And I think maybe in his mind, he thought he'd be like 74 or something. So I feel like him seeing me at a younger age having a kid might have been like a change up to him.
Sure. Do you think that do you think he earned respect for you?
Yeah, because I feel like now he's seeing like everything I go through. And it's like he got more help from his parents. As another side note too, my last grandparent died in like 2004. So I never really had grandparents. I had them for just a very short time in my life, and then that was it. So when my dad had me, and you know my mom too, they both had their parents alive, so they got more grandparent help.
Sure.
As to me, I got gypped out of that. So I just have them. But then since, you know, my dad works a lot and then my mom has a lot of health issues, they could do bare minimum, you know. And they wish they could do more for me, but like it's all I could get, you know.
Yeah.
So in a sense, I feel like he does respect me a little bit more because it's like I have it a little bit harder than they did.
Because something has to. The things that I think about when let's say, for example, you have a parent that was hostile to you for all that time, and then suddenly is calmer now, like something has to have shifted.
Yep.
Like is he still hostile with you sometimes, or?
Yeah, he has his moments, but it's very much less than what it used to be. And it's even funnier too because like my previous job, one of the house jobs I did, right before, because my son was born in the beginning of 2022, I had stopped working with them around like I think that summer. So she even noticed like, hey, you know, your dad's a lot softer than he used to be.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's crazy too, because it's like, I don't know, I guess just me having a kid really must have had like a big effect on him.
Yeah.
I really feel like it's just that realization though. Like he's like, wow, this is different, you know?
Yeah. How do you think fatherhood has impacted you?
So it's like, I'm very more, goal oriented now. I have a lot of goals in mind that I want to get, completed. Compared to as before I had him, I was just living life. I was just, all right, if this happens, this happens.
Yeah, freedom.
Yep. So it's like a lot of stuff has changed. I have a lot of just personal goals and like a bucket list I have. And I just want to do everything I can.
What's on your, what are some things on your bucket list?
Bucket list. So let's see. So one of them mainly being because I'm a car guy.
Yeah.
I want to have every type of car that I've liked since I was a kid. So I'm slowly getting that one done. I haven't taken any trips lately. I think since 7 or 8 years ago was the last time I took a vacation. So there's just a bunch of states I want to go to and like landmarks and stuff like that I want to eventually do. Also, another goal too that I got is I just want to become a homeowner. For some reason, I just want that feeling of freedom and having my own land and property and, just a yard for my son to play in.
Yeah.
So stuff like that, just a lot of personal goals.
What do you hope for your son?
Honestly, I felt like I should have been in sports. I want him to be, from what I noticed too, he's already kind of athletic. He loves playing, throwing balls around and just stuff like that. So, if he's into that, I'm not going to force him, but if he wants to do sports, I want him to do that because I didn't have enough confidence to actually join a high school team or anything. I did bowling, for a for fun league thing on a Saturday when I was I think 6th or 7th grade. But, me personally, I didn't have enough confidence at that time to actually, do a high school team or anything like that. So if he wants to do that, go for it. I just want him to just make sure he's doing everything that makes him happy in life. Not forcing his happiness or anything. Not doing something that I would be happy to see him do. I want him to be happy. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times too, parents they push their kid.
They live through their kids.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's that. I don't want to live that way with him. I want it to be solely what makes him happy.
That's great, man. I do have a question for you regarding your relationship with his mom. And then if you don't want to get into that, we don't have to. But I know that we had when we were talking earlier, there was some issues that were going on there. Mm-hmm. How are things going?
It has its moments where it's pretty bad. We're solely just trying to just focus on my son Chase. Just do everything we can for him. Our personal issues, it's we try to pan them out and just work it out the best we can. But we're both trying to be in his life and just trying to give him a good life. But it's just me personally, I don't want him to see that type of stuff because my household too, my dad would always vocalize every time he'd be upset with my mom, and I was seeing that at a young age, and he's swearing at her and all this stuff. And I feel like it has kind of a traumatizing effect. So it's I don't want that to be pushed onto him because I don't want him to view us differently because we have personal issues between each other. It's all love towards my son no matter what.
Yeah.
Regarding his mom though too, it's there's only so much we could do.
Now, as a kid, I dealt with a divorce. So one of the biggest critiques I have for my parents is how involved the kids were with the divorce, where I felt like I had to take a side, right? So one of the things that I would hope for is if there was ever a situation like that where relationship doesn't work out and I have a child with somebody, how can we have because you have to have, I would imagine, you're in the situation now, you would have to have some form of contact because I imagine you don't want your son missing out on a relationship with his mom.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, that's the last thing I want. I want her to do better for him. She has her own issues and personal problems and that, but at the end of the day, I always try to instill hey, do this for Chase. Do what you would want him to see. You want him to see you in a good light. So it's just do everything you can for him.
And what would you say has been a noticeable challenge being in a co-parenting situation?
Ooh. So there's a quote out there: "It takes a village to raise a child." That's very true. A big one with me, like, she has a lot of family that could help with just watching him and stuff like that. I have virtually nobody. I have family friends, and I only got 2 of them that can help me out. Due to, like, I don't have any family that lives around here, bad relationships with family, or, just there's not too many of us either, due to, my uncles and aunts passing away and stuff like that too. So, I don't have that luxury of just like, hey, watch Chase while I go do this, or hey, dude, I got to take him with me everywhere.
Sure.
It's very rare that I actually get moments to myself. So that one is a major challenge of co-parenting, because if you don't have any type of help, it's rough. And I try my best to not do the childcare route just yet because of how expensive it is.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm thankful for the people I do got that help me.
So what did it teach you about relationships are harder than I thought.
Yep.
I thought as a kid, you think it's a certain way.
Yep.
Like when I was a kid, I thought this was my viewpoint of relationships, and what ultimately made me realize, like, oh, there's a lot more going on than I thought. And I used to think that I could all I have to do is hold on to this person as tightly as possible, and hopefully this person also feels the same way. And that's how it's supposed to be, because my parents always went everywhere together. Everything they did was together. I never saw them have alone time. So I'm thinking this is what love is all about, right? If you are not with this person at all times, like, you don't love them, or they don't love each other, right? But I realized that that's actually a codependent relationship of, I cannot live without this person.
Nope.
And so that taught me, when I went through my hardships in my relationships, of, I'm like clinging to these people. I am not in a healthy relationship. I am in a codependent relationship. And I found that out through therapy. And so the reason why is because I have a low value view of myself. Mm-hmm. And so I need somebody else to give me value. Yep. That makes sense, right? Yeah. And once I realized that, I was like, oh, I look at my parents and I'm like, that's what happened. And so for you, what do you think, what was your biggest misconception about relationships?
Ooh, okay. Biggest misconception, I would say, so it kind of leads off of your subject. So I felt like I was always in survival mode. And then specifically, with my child's mother, when we were together, she's more based off of love. So, like, I've never really had too much luck with relationships in the past either. I was in one, I think, around 2014, and then I didn't date all the way up till 2020. I've literally just focused on myself and all that.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was kind of in survival mode. But then when she came around, she's very love-based. So, like, she was more the clingy one. And like, I'm the type of person where, like, hey, I need my space a little bit.
Sure.
So I felt like that was another reason why we came to, like, a lot of, issues was, it's because it's like I was trying to explain, hey, I'm cool with just going to the store by myself. And then it would cause, like, a little fight because she wanted to go with. And I'm like, just little stuff like that would come up. But, like, it was just, like, the not understanding of that I wasn't really, like, from, like, a household where a lot of love was shown like that.
Sure.
And I was just by myself all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't think she understood that too much.
What did it feel like? Because I'm curious, because mine is that, more of that, right? Like, did you ever figure out what your love language is?
Food.
Food?
Yeah, funny enough. Yeah, food. Food and just, like, listening to music and stuff like that. Because we had, like, the same music taste. But yeah, it was just like when it came to, like, for me, like, it seeing, like, her version of, like, affection towards me, I kind of go into defense mode a little bit, if that makes sense. Like, because I it's like a foreign thing to me. Like,
Sure.
So it was like, I felt like because my past kind of played a big factor into that. And like, it was just seeing like the stuff my parents would go through. I felt like it was kind of, because when you're in that type of environment, it kind of just, lays on you at some point too. It's like, it kind of rubs off. So, there was like some qualities I feel like I could have changed that I took from my dad. And that's just from just living there. Like it just naturally happened like that, where it's like, I'd always be kind of argumentative with certain things when I shouldn't have been. And like tougher on her and more stern about things.
You mentioned that you felt like you had gotten defensive. What did it feel like what's the question? Did it feel like it wasn't genuine? Did it feel like you were afraid that maybe it was just for the moment? Like what did you feel when that happened?
So like I could say the best example for that would be my dad was very rule based. So when we got our apartment, I kind of was rule based, and she wasn't used to ever really having rules because she came from like a broken family. So I feel like for her, because her dad wasn't really too much in her life like that, I feel like for her, like she sees me as like kind of like a father figure telling her what to do. It kind of didn't sit with her well. So like there was just stuff like that was popping up, and it was like, oh man. So it's like when she wasn't trying to follow like the basic rules I had for our apartment, that's when a lot of issues would come up too. But I feel like even then it's like, I'm very like specific about my stuff, and I want everything to be like perfect. So like, I feel like that was part of the reason too. Like she just wasn't used to that, and it was kind of just, making things happen like that way.
How long were you guys dating before you moved in together?
About a year.
About a year.
Yeah. So it was kind of rushed too. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on because we moved in during COVID. So it was like, I think we moved in like February 2021.
I was in a similar boat.
Really?
Where moved in with my ex when it was even less time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like 6 months. But it was rushed also because of, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to live at home.
Yep.
That was like my big thing is I don't want to live at home. Like I want to avoid that at all costs. Growing up and, being at home with my stepdad, like I had to avoid it like at all costs. And at one point I had to be at home, right? To raise enough money to have a good enough money to move in. Right. Yep. And so I did have to move in, but I wanted to avoid like ever going back there. Yeah, that was like,
exactly.
That was my goal. So yeah. So it was like, I have to do it this way.
So I was going to say too, did COVID play a big factor in you wanting to leave even faster?
Oh,
that lockdown stuff. Yeah, that was with me too. It was like that lockdown was my last straw. I'm like, I can't, I got to go. You know what I mean? So it's crazy.
What did you learn about, because the truth is you think you know someone until you move in with them.
Yep, that's 100% true.
Did you also learn about what you like and don't like?
Yeah. So a lot of stuff I would have been cool with as a teenager. The minute I moved in, not no more, It's like a lot of stuff had to change, mainly because like I felt like myself. I'm like, okay, I'm getting older. I got to start putting my foot down, especially because we were already talking about planning a family and stuff like that right when we were moving in.
Right.
So it's like some stuff's got to change. You just got to not drink every day and not do, smoke or anything.
Sure.
So it's like there was stuff like that, but her being a few years younger than me, she's, I think, 2.5 years younger. So like I felt like maybe her maturity level wasn't the same. I feel like as a person, since I've been through a lot of stuff, I feel like my maturity level was very high at a young age.
Yeah.
So it's like I feel like an old man right now. You know what I mean? So she wasn't used to that either.
Sure.
And like the different maturity levels, I feel like had a big factor into it too.
Yeah. But we are getting close to our time. So I do want to ask a couple of questions that I ask all of my guests. Okay. Currently, what do you have going on now? If there's anything you'd like to share with people, or what are your goals for the future if you don't want to share anything?
So what I got going on now, I'm actively trying to see where my relationship with my child's mother goes. I'm hoping for the best of trying to keep us all together. I've given her a lot of chances though, so it's like you got to see. There's only so much I can do, and only so much time I'm going to give her to try to make the changes so we could stick together. So I'm trying to see where that's going to go. Other than that, now that it's summertime, I just got a lot of stuff on my plate where I'm just spending time outside as much as I can because we only have like 3 or 4 months of good weather and then back to being freezing.
Even summertime isn't great in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Because like you really only have spring and fall before things get unbearable, whether too cold or too hot. It's just the humidity is the problem.
Yeah, because that sticky feeling and that wet clothes is like, oh, God, man. So it's just like I'm just trying to work around that work schedule. Also working towards my goal of eventually getting being a homeowner. That one's a big one on me. But like I also like a reason why like I moved out of my apartment to take care of my mom because she's sick. So I'm seeing where that's going with that too. Like seeing where her health's at because I'm pretty much her caretaker when my dad isn't around. So it's just like a lot of stuff like that. Just the main goal right now is just building up savings, I'd say.
Okay. And have you discovered purpose? And if you haven't, what do you think it might be?
Ooh, purpose. Purpose in general. Over the last few years, I've been like a person everybody could talk to about things. So I don't know if I'm like just like everyone's like go-to person for advice, like kind of like a therapist, I guess you could say. But like purpose in that sense is just being there for everybody, whenever they need me, and just trying to be happy.
Yeah.
Just take the challenges I got with life and just just roll with it and just not let it affect me.
If you could speak to your childhood self, what would you say?
Do more. Do more. Don't think too much. I let overthinking take a big factor, a big part of my childhood because I'd overthink stuff and then not do it. Felt like I could have made a lot more memories. Because memories go a long way. Either because I have a very good, just my mind is very good, but I'm a very, I like pictures and videos.
Sure.
They mean a lot. So I felt like I didn't have a lot of pictures and videos from my childhood. Like I only have for like a very small phase, but then like 9 to 17, there's nothing. So it's like, I wish I could have just, either had more friends or just did more at that time.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you being on. We'll have you on again. I know this is not our last conversation.
Definitely, Josh. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Of course. And cut.